You're tuning into the Merdeka Award Roundtable, and we're talking about sports and how it can contribute to nation building. Now, sports in itself, we talk about athlete and grassroots development, is by its very nature at the very heart of what sport is. And my question to my panel is, do we have an efficient athlete grassroots development program? Let's start with Datuk.
Well, I don't think we have really a good structure at the moment, yeah. And there's only one team in Malaysia that I can see is doing good development program, that is in Johor, where JDT has started a very good structure or concept, where not only in terms of developing players, but the facilities that they have. So I hope that the other states or other clubs that can really upgrade whatever facilities or development program that they have, like what JDT has been doing. Just imagine if JDT can produce about 50 players of under 14 players, and all the states that we have 50 players in every category, so we have bigger pool of players. We have to understand, in football not everybody can make it to the international arena, so they have to start thinking, how can we make it not only with bigger pool of players, but we want quality players, as what Tuanku was saying. We need good coaches, we need good trainers, where not only teachers, where it's very important in young age, you need to have the right basic, like football, techniques that they must master before they grow when they come to 16, 17 or 18 years old.
Well, taking the example of JDT, also if we talk about Bukit Jalil Sports School and Bandar Penawa, these are schools and JDT producing talents at the teen level, more on the teen level. But what about before that, where the crucial age of identifying talent when they are very young, perhaps kindergarten, for example? Dr. Wirdati, do you have an opinion on this?
Okay. I think the sports schools that we have in Malaysia currently, we have 20, 4 of them at the federal level, and the rest are at state levels. I think it's quite difficult to see the achievement based on the products of these sports schools as it is now. I mean, before that, before we have sports schools, we do have good success stories from our own athletes, but now that we do, not so much improvement in terms of the output. So there could be something that we need to look into, and as a researcher, that is always something that I would like to look into. But I know for a fact that in sports schools, the curriculum are still based with the kind of curriculum that the Ministry of Education have. For example, the period of learning is from morning until afternoon, but the students will have to go for training early, very early in the morning. And when they come to class, they are either very tired or couldn't focus. So there should be something like a relook into how the curriculum or the program delivery is being made, so that we can hear more success stories from the products of the sports schools. Tunku.
I'd like to just say that I think that the sports schools actually start at too young an age. And I think what has happened, I think, with the creation of these sports schools, a lot of the normal schools who used to excel in sport have almost given up those sports. So rather than adding on to what we had already, I think it's just replaced what we had. And I think that, as I agree with you, they have to rethink. I think that sometimes specialization, centralization is not necessarily a good idea, and certainly not at too young an age.
Let me just maybe add something. We did a program a few years back now in India with one of the largest news channels in the country, and a sponsor was brought in, and it was all driven towards, the product was called Marks for Sports, which basically meant in India at that time, which I think is similar here, you didn't really get credit for it when you did sports in school. So you do it as an extra curriculum, but you don't really get marks for it. So India had the same problem, and if you look at Indian records in the Olympics, it's not really bright. So they looked at it in the same way, that once children become, get credit and get, rewarded in a sense, there are two things. The parents will start focusing on it because it's not just about, getting an A in math or in English, but it's about, becoming an overall, strong character. So that was a very, very successful campaign. The government started to look at it very seriously on the back of basically newspapers and everyone else starting to talk about this campaign. So I think that's where it sometimes has to start. You kind of have to start looking at it in a different way. And you have to incentivize people. So if there's no incentive for you to do well in sports outside, if you, one of these, 0.1% who might become a professional, like we were talking about earlier, sports isn't just about the pros. That's the pinnacle of it when we all look towards that. That's great. But in reality, if you're trying to create a sporting culture, that means all of us. That's every single child and every single person in the country. So, and majority of them will never become superstars or even good athletes. But they can get something in their early life, and which carries through their whole life in that sense. So I think that's really what Marks for Sports was all about. It wasn't about just identifying the next superstar, but it was identifying a sporting culture.
I think what Marcus mentioned is so important. You're not talking. We should not be talking when we talk about junior development about whether they're going to be world champion or whether they're getting to the national team. What we should be talking about, whether they're enjoying the sport, it's healthy for them, you got the right moral values, ethics, they become good citizens, good leaders, good team players. Those are what we're looking for first, I think, when we're creating this organized activity for sport. Not the top ones will then come through. They'll even ask their parents, I think this is too simple for me. I want to be more more football-oriented or more squash-oriented.
Before I go to the next break, let me get your thoughts, Datuk, about what the gentleman has just mentioned about, first of all, we need to foster that competitive sports culture in Malaysia before we want to talk about creating world champions.
Well, I'd like to come back to what Doctor was saying regarding sports schools. Yeah, I faced a situation when I was coaching Bukit Jalil sports schools, 7-8 years ago. The students asking me, football players asking me, we call it sports schools. The Ministry of Education wants us to excel in study. Ministry of Sports wants us to be good in sport. So where do we want to go? Yeah. So I face a problem when I have to take example Nazmi Faiz Manso. He has to go to Indonesia for SEA Games and have to skip his SPM, and they make it a big issue. Sorry to say, I'm not saying that study or it's not important. It's important, but at the same time, look at Azmi now. Like football career is very short, and what is he getting now? I think that is something that is very difficult if you were to concentrate on your study. Like I said, he has talent. If you have talents, why must you look upon something else? If you have talents in football, tennis, or whatever sports, you have to concentrate on your sports. If, like what Doctor was saying, if we can help you in other way to excel, like journalists, or probably you can become a referee. Oh, there's something that involved with football. So where do we want to go as sports school?
The idea that you go into sports just because you cannot do it academically, I think it's a fallacy. 90% of collegiate sponsorship at universities in the US are for athletes. So that is something to think about. We don't have that kind of support. And again, back to the selection of the kind of careers that the student athletes could go into. So this should be, inbuilt in the program so that they will know exactly where they're going with the sports that they're choosing and also the kind of education that they're getting.
And that's what we want to talk about next, sports as an industry. We'll go for a short commercial break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.